welcome to the very first episode of The Horror with Mike
and Nate.
And on this very first episode, we are going to be tackling our top five.
Our top five horror movies of all time.
Of all time.
You're stuck on a desert island. You only get 5 movies. And we want to start with this topic because if you so fundamentally disagree with what our favorite horror movies are,
right,
then maybe you're not going to want to check us out in the future. Hey, and that's okay because we both believe that these are the best 5 movies ever. So
right,
we're gonna come at those later, and so you can decide whether we're your type of horror guys or
yeah,
not.
exactly. And that's the whole thing. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Nate? Do you hate us? Always feel free to fire back at us at our Facebook, Fright Flicks on Facebook. Fright Flicks for the Twitter is at Fright Flicks.
And at Nateflix for me personally, because you'll probably totally love everything I say, but if you hate it, let me know. Let me know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're not scaring us. But for this first episode, I was thinking to kick everything off, let's get to know each other. Let's let everyone kind of get to know us, because there's probably quite a few people out there who listening to this know me, and there's probably quite a few who know you. But
initially, like this first week, probably everybody that's listening knows us.
Exactly. But how many of them know the two of us?
No, very few.
So, half are going to be meeting me, half are going to be meeting you. So, getting to know you here on The Horror, the very first episode ever. And then, like I said, at the end, we'll go ahead and give you our top 5, because I'm sure that's the first question everyone always asks me.
Yeah, and it's a tough one. Oh, what's your favorite horror movie?
Yeah,
what do you mean, what's your favorite? It was hard enough coming up with 5 favorites.
And it's going to change by next week anyway. So
yeah. Top 20 would have been hard enough.
Yeah, I know, right? Ugh. So, yeah, we're going to get into all of that towards the end. What I'd like to kind of start off with is just giving you a personal history of our love of the genre, and to be a little bold, why we think or don't think we're qualified to be making these kinds of statements. Nate, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I've got my resume
Paper,
prepared.
yeah.
Well, I've tried my hand at script writing. I have a published novel. I spent 10 years as a movie critic in a newspaper. I also owned and operated my own video store long after all the blockbusters and movie galleries in Hollywood went out of business, simply because I loved movies that much. None of this qualifies me for shit other than to prove that I'm dedicated to movies. And in the world of movies, horror movies have always been my favorite.
Right.
Now, none of that is what got me started on horror. I'm going to let you go here in a second, but I believed when I was growing up that the house I lived in was haunted. So that made me interested in scary things. When I was 10 or 11 years old, my dear deceased grandmother bought me a copy of the book Cujo by Stephen King. This was the year that Cujo was released as a major motion picture. And I still remember, I wish I had the book. It has long since fallen apart. I still remember the paperback with the white picket fence with the word Cujo written in blood on it.
Poster, yeah.
I knew nothing about it, but I talked her into buying it for me. I devoured the book in 2 days, and in retrospect, it's a terrible book, but it opened my eyes. It not only did it teach me several cuss words that I didn't know, and a lot of stuff about sex I didn't know, and I probably should have by that age. But there was something so dark. Now, Stephen King, to this day, says that he has no recollection of writing Cujo because he was such an addict at the point.
Right.
And it's, like I said, it's not a good book, but at the time, it blew me away. I became a hardcore Stephen King fan.
Right.
I started reading, watching anything that I could get my hands or eyes on. Not too long after that, this is another very powerful memory for me. Buddy of mine lived up the road. We lived on the Oregon coast. Like, you could see the ocean from our front yard. My buddy Shad had me over to stay over on sleepovers, like every Friday night. 2 particular Friday nights, they were showing a horror movie on television. I don't remember what channel it was.
Right.
The first week was The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog.
Nice.
Which, when you could look out the front glass and see the ocean, is scarier.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The next week was Kubrick's The Shining.
Whoa.
Shit my pants scared. The Shining, I was too young to see The Shining. I admit that now.
Right.
I hadn't read the book at that point. Not that would have made it better.
Right.
But shit my pants scared. Are those 2 little girls?
Oh, God.
So, horror book and horror movie, those were 2 huge influences on me.
Right.
And particularly movie-wise, when you start out being scared by The Fog and The Shining, later on in life, it turns out that it makes you harder to scare with shitty movies.
Right, sure.
The bar is set kind of high.
Yeah, definitely.
What about yourself?
So, as far as my history, well, I guess what we were talking about is our credentials. You can't see, but I'm making little air quotes around credentials. But it's just, lifelong movie fans, and horror is my favorite genre within movies. So we figured this was a good place to combine our efforts and talk about it. I have written about 3 screenplays. One of them is a horror film. And everything I do always tends to leak back into horror. Horror is my thing. Horror is what I love. And for me, that basically all started with literally like the first video store I ever went into. Like, I remember it was on 53rd and 13th here in Gainesville. It's now a Carpet Cleaners near the Scotties. You remember that, Nate?
I do remember that.
Yeah, the Scotties. There's like a Subway and a whatever there now. But it was there, and my dad would take me, and I refer to it as the section under the window. It was like there was just this building and all the pictures. And not only were there all these pictures, which that's the best part of any movie, let alone a horror movie, is their cover art. And then to know that there was 2 hours worth of entertainment past those. And it was all open for us at that point. But I was terrified of the horror section. I remember Freddy Krueger, they would have a stand-up of him. And I'm a little kid. I know that it's fake, but it's life-size. And so there's a life-size, I don't know, I have no context. Freddy, burned, terrifying looking dude with like razor claw. So I was scared from the very beginning, and it lasted a long time. I was one of those kids who would get scared and like disturbed by stuff in regular movies. And so I was like, I can't handle horror. Horror is the most horrific thing ever, and I'll never be able to take it. And then I had been shown a few things. My dad got me The Hidden, John Carpenter's The Thing. My mom showed me Jaws. Bless you. My mom showed me Jaws and The Stepfather, which that's a straight fucking slasher. I don't know why that one was okay with her.
What a great movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
Terry O'Quinn.
Yes.
For life, Terry O'Quinn. After seeing Stepfather at a young
and
age.
Jill Schulin. She's one of my favorite screen
Dude, part of the whole goddamn reason I watched that shitty show Lost is because Terry O'Quinn.
Yes.
Terry O'Quinn is in your shit. I'm going to watch your shit.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I saw all those. That didn't really do too much for me. I have to say, what really, I believe, ignited my love, and I still, to the altar of it, if you could say, plus it's also an awesome Halloween movie. I watch it every year, Hocus Pocus. Now, that might sound a little bit strange, but I was a kid when that came out. And it's love of zombies, graveyards, just Halloween, the season. I wasn't allowed to participate in Halloween, by the way. Thanks, Mom. This is what happens when you withhold Halloween from kids.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to watch horror, and I went to a Catholic school from kindergarten to 7th grade. This is what happens when you try and hold this stuff back from people.
I know. That's why I encourage my children to smoke cigarettes now. Because I figure that they won't smoke cigarettes later, if I tell them that it's cool now.
I'm just saying, man, don't hold Halloween and all these kind of things away, and
there's something basically human, primitive, primal about being scared.
Right.
Like, back in the primitive days, it was a survival instinct. Now it's more for fun, but there is something basic and universal about being scared, and a lot of us love it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting as a kid.
Yeah, it's that taboo thing too,
it's
and
like
then it was made.
Sex as a kid, you're just like.
And then it was made even more taboo by the fact that I wasn't allowed to watch them, even if I wanted to. But yeah, and so that's how it all started, and then I really didn't become a horror movie fan until I think it was the summer of 2001. I was at a party, saw they were all watching Evil Dead 2, told my dad about it. He was like, you should fucking watch that movie. And I was dating a girl at the time who lived across the street from... Oh God, I miss these days. Lived across the street from a rickety fucking building that was a video rental place. It was like the Video Barn or some lame shit. And rented Evil Dead 2. And both of us... I don't know if her love has stopped in the last few years. I keep track with her, but it did not stop with me after that. That was the movie that when I watched it, I finished it, went back across the street, and I think started with Friday the 13th Part 1, back, watched every horror movie I could find and have yet to stop since.
You made me think of something that I haven't thought about in years. Evil Dead 2. I was in middle school. And I found out that one town over, like 12, 14 miles away, some theater was showing Evil Dead 2 on opening weekend.
Oh, shit.
It got a super limited release, right?
Well, it's unrated, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So me and a couple of my buddies, we concocted a plan where we would get one of their mothers to drive us up to the theater and drop us off.
Right.
We would buy tickets to a different movie and sneak in.
Of course.
And it was like the other movie. I forget. It was One Crazy Summer. It was something with John Cusack in it. I'm sure of it.
Of course.
But the plan actually went off to perfection, and at age like 13 or whatever,
right.
I got to sit in a theater and watch unrated Evil Dead 2 with a crowd full of adults, thinking that I was getting away with something, which made it all the sweeter.
Yeah. Right. Of course. Yeah. And so go figure. That's how it started for me, and it was endless past that point. And I keep chasing the dragon of finding a movie that scares me as bad as I thought all those years horror movies were.
Sure.
When they were this mystical thing. When it was just a movie that fits well in the section under the window.
Sure.
As I would call it.
Yeah, movies you haven't even heard of because, it's not PG-13 and playing at the Cineplex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, if we're going to be recommending great movies for you to watch, what movies do we consider truly great?
Right.
What are the best of the best? Now, for my personal approach, I thought of the movies that, for better or worse, I tend to compare other movies to.
Sure.
These are the greats, like the best of the best. So we both want to lay out our top 5 all-time favorite horror movies. These are the movies that, like, if we have to say this is why we love horror, it's because primarily of these movies. That's my approach to it. I don't know if it was your approach to it or not.
Possibly.
And with that approach, I got to say that the number 5 choice was the very hardest.
Yeah.
I debated it. There are so many classics. I'm like, do I go with the movie that scared me the most? I considered Nightmare on Elm Street The Thing. I love 28 Days Later, Dawn of the Dead, George Romero.
Right.
Ultimately, I settled on maybe a somewhat unusual choice, a movie that I watch more than any of those other ones. It's called Return of the Living Dead.
Ah, nice.
Which is
nice.
One of the funniest horror movies ever made.
True.
It's a riff on Night of the Living Dead that uses that as a jumping off point. You know how everybody likes to joke about how zombies say brains?
Right.
That actually only happened in one movie and its sequels. Right. Just the one, but it was so good that it sort of permeated zombie culture.
It completely took over, and it never is.
It's funny, it's energetic, it's scary, it's gross, it's got pretty good special effects, and it's got pretty good terrible special effects in places.
Yeah.
It's got an amazing soundtrack, it's got a great look to it, it's got this punk vibe that is not matched by any other horror movie. It's unique, it's original, and I don't sign off on any of the sequels. None of them. But that first one is one of my all-time favorites. I'm giving it my number 5 slot.
Right on, right on. Yeah, sounds pretty good. I'm going to kind of hold off my personal critique on that movie because quite possibly that ends up somewhere else on my list.
Fair enough.
So I will go ahead and start with my number 5, which would be the original Evil Dead. And spoiler alert, Evil Dead 2 is not actually on my top 5 of all time.
So why is the first one on your list and not Evil Dead 2?
Well, it's because Evil Dead 2, like I said, I love me some horror comedy. But it kind of toes more of it's a cartoon.
It is.
It's almost
at no point is it scary.
No, it's almost a parody of old horror. Every kind of gore, horror, that kind of thing. It's about as horrific as an episode of Monty Python. One of the reasons Reanimator wouldn't make top 5, just because I think it tends to go towards comedy a little bit.
Would make my top 20
more.
Reanimator would make my top 5.
Yeah, top 5. It's a hard list. But to preface my list too, it's the movies that maybe aren't like technically the best. All of these different reasons, blah blah blah. But these are the 5 movies that if you want the best insight into like me personally and what I judge things for, these are my top 5.
Well, nothing is more subjective than what is funny or what is scary.
Right.
And that's why I think this list is kind of important, to give a baseline for both of us.
Sure.
Should I go with my number 4, or are you done?
I want to say a little bit more on Evil Dead. Evil Dead beats out all the other ones because it's the first, but Evil Dead has a quality to it. One, it's a horror comedy. As far as I'm concerned, it is just a very... And if you know Sam Raimi and you listen to Bruce Campbell and you watch the other movies where they fully embraced it, there's comedy in that. It was straight-up comedians trying to be serious, but they can't. So there are these little leaks of excess and deadpan and trying to be serious that becomes comedy to me. Like, it's not laugh out loud funny, but it's like it gives me the joy of a comedy, a rambunctious comedy. The other is I think it's kind of genuinely scary too, and it's hard to scare me. I didn't really include the scariest movies. That could be another list that we do, just because I prefer a different kind of sensation for my favorite horror movies than being scared. As weird as that sounds, you know. But yeah, Evil Dead does something that we talked about this one time in the past with the movie Bellflower. Now, Bellflower isn't a great movie, but it reinvigorates your love for technically wanting to make a movie.
Sure.
And Evil Dead is not only great and endlessly entertaining, but when I watch it, it makes me want to make a movie right now.
It's funny you say that because... the greatest thing I can say about Evil Dead 2 is every time I watch it, it makes me want to make a movie. Because, and this is something the two movies have in common. Raimi's passion for the movies he's making just bleeds through. It jumps off the screen. Right. Yeah. He's so enthusiastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and that's one of the things I try and work into anything that I do is not shaving off the edges. That's almost one of the reasons, other than it goes more comedy, is why Evil Dead 2 drops down, because it's a little more polished. Like, I like that it's rough around the edges. It feels like you can feel people on the other side of the camera. Stuff isn't done quite right. It's almost like it's poorly made, but its poorly madeness is such its charm too.
Sure, it's poorly made. It's made way better than it has any right to be for the money they had to use.
Yes, I love the behind the scenes stories of it, and it just it reinvigorates my love of movies, where I'm like, why am I not making horror movies right now while I watch it? Every single time, I love the original Evil Dead. Number 5. Number 4, sir.
My number 4 pick is the only remake on my list. It's the all-time best horror remake, The Hills Have Eyes.
Really?
I love The Hills Have
5.
Eyes.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of the original Hills Have Eyes because the Wes Craven movie was so far ahead of its time. You know, it was brutal ahead of its time. It was a very good movie, but it's a movie of its time and it's dated. And Hills Have Eyes took everything that was great about the original and brought it to an exponential level. And the first hour and 15 minutes of this movie is a great horror movie. But those final reels with the unlikely hero's journey, that's all I want to say about it.
Okay, yeah.
Just kicks it up to another level. And you know what? This list is totally personal. When you're a little kid, The Exorcist isn't as scary as when you're a grown-up and you have kids. Then there's an extra level of scariness to it. So, Doug going to get the baby, since I saw that movie right after I had my first baby, it struck a chord.
Right.
So it struck a chord in such a way that, yeah, maybe I'm overrating this movie, but I'm not. I'm not telling you this is the best horror movie ever made. I'm saying I love this goddamn movie.
Right.
And to this day, you know what? It's a movie that I love so much I can't watch it very often. Some movies, like Return of the Living Dead, I can watch over and over and over again.
Sure.
Hills Have Eyes, it's so intense. I love it so much that, like a lot of other great movies, I watch it once in a while with great fanfare.
Right.
So that's my number 4. Is, if you ask me next week, maybe it doesn't make my top 5. But tonight, my number 4, Hills Have Eyes.
Nice. Wow. God, see, that's the thing is, and you didn't spoil it for me earlier. I went off on a little rant personally between the two of us about how much I like that movie, and you didn't spoil. Good for you. You didn't tell me you were holding that in the barrel. I love Hills Have Eyes. God, it's hard to say, but it's like it's a movie that I still personally have to give it a few more years because I can't believe it's that good.
Yeah.
I'm just like, fuck, it can't be that good.
Were you talking about Hills Have Eyes when you saw it and then you went home and
God, I love
that was
it.
me. I was like, did I just have my shit blown out of my head?
Yeah, it's like,
and then a week later, a month later, it comes out on DVD. I watch it again. I'm like, oh my God, it's just as good as I remember it being.
And years later, I'm still like, damn, it's still fucking good.
That is, without question, the newest entry on my list.
Oh God, I wonder. Shit. Well, on my personal list, but no, how I feel about that movie is that movie. You know, people say these kinds of things all the time, and you see it on bad fucking posters and shit. But edge of my seat, nailed me to the back of the theater. Blah. This is one of the few movies that actually, as close as you can have to that sensation.
From the opening credits, it generates this just unsettling atmosphere.
Yes.
You know?
And it's just like, and a lot of horror movies do that, where it's like, this is building to something. That builds to something, and I think I'd seen the original. I knew where it was going, and it was still worse.
Yeah. Well, it took it a lot farther than the original did.
Oh my goodness.
But
and just
I'm a big fan of the third act of horror movies. That can erase all sins. Yeah. This was a movie that was already really, really good, and then the third act just kicked it up to another level.
Well, see, the thing is like, I would disagree with you in the way that the third act is great. It definitely is. It's a perfect end of the movie. It's perfect. However, I do think the movie peaked for me with the trailer scene because, I mean, I watch a lot of movies that are disturbing. I watch a lot of movies that are shock value. You know, that happens. I like those every once in a while. But that is, not only does it, like, not disturb you to your core that you never want to watch it again, it somehow keeps the fun in something that's totally not fun.
Right.
But it's how Alexandre Aja is a master of filmmaking, because he infuses huge amounts of gore, shocks on a movie I knew what was going to happen, but still how it was presented was still shocking to me. How he leads up the tension of those moments, how everyone starts to say, and just when it all goes to hell, it still made me think, are they going to do something where they don't do what the original did? Like, more like, please don't do what the original did. Please don't do... Like, it was so...
The only thing that I missed that was awesome in the original that wasn't in the remake was the line, "We're gonna cook that baby like a Christmas ham." Which is just a great line.
You were right.
All right,
the campiness was gone from it.
So that's my number 4, and your number 4.
My number 4 would be and this is why I think, I don't know if I could say Hills Have Eyes is the most recent. I think they're pretty close, but I think the French film, I didn't even think about that until this second, from Alexandre Aja himself, the man. So we share that in that way.
Absolutely.
High Tension is my number 4, and I thought it would be a lot higher. I almost always say this is my favorite horror movie. But when I got really technical, it slid down a bit. But this movie blew my fucking mind the first time I watched it, and does every single time since then. It has its cake and eats it too. One of my other favorites is Inside, that loses the French New Wave to this.
That's a whole episode.
Is
our top 5 favorite French horror movies.
And they're, like, especially recently.
There are a lot of them.
In
good
like
ones.
2000, the year 2000 to 10, they run shit.
Yes.
But High Tension, I can't personally defend the last half hour. That makes it even better in my eyes. That you could have something so horrendously off the fucking map, like, does not work and is bad. But the rest of the movie and what the ending's saying about the movie makes me love it even more. Like, you could throw in something that bad and I still am 100% for this movie. Its use of tension throughout, no pun intended, but anyway, the use of tension for the first half is, like, damn near unparalleled. Like,
and then the violence
and then it explodes and fucking goes.
It's shocking every single time. It's
And
shockingly
gory
violent.
as
From guys that enjoy shockingly violent movies, this movie is shockingly violent in the best possible way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the other thing about the violence is it's very cartoonish in the Kill Bill blood sprays that will come.
A guy gets his head knocked off with a credenza.
Yeah, and but it's not funny. It doesn't inspire funny. It inspires pure fucking love of horror.
I remember that kill scene made me. I'm watching it by myself in the middle of the night, and I said, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
So, and the movie is filled with holy shit moments.
Yeah, and I remember I got a copy from fucking Indonesia or something. I had to order it offline. It sat like a little kid waiting for it. Talk about expectation. I've never done that before or since. And I was waiting for it. The box has... The main title is misspelled on the box. It's Hawate Tension. I watched it, went outside, smoked a cigarette in a daze, went back in and re-watched it. So, that alone says something. I could watch it at any time. I would debate it to the end of time why it's amazing. No one I personally know, other than complaining about the ending, doesn't think that it's a great movie. Even people who don't like horror movies still think it's a great movie.
You can't help. It has that quality that all great horror movies have, which you can't help to be caught up in it to some level.
Mm-hmm. It's an adrenaline. See, I'm using all the stuff I never thought I was. Adrenaline fucking.
You know, another future idea for a show is this director has 2 movies on our lists so far.
Yeah.
And
how? Yeah.
and
Nice.
he's fallen off in recent years. I would have a few years ago, and you know what? To this day, his backlog is so good. He is a director to watch. Period. Whatever comes out.
You know, anytime.
Which is the reason I watch Horns, because if his name is on it, I'm going to watch it.
The reason I didn't is I'm not going to sully him.
Well,
for me.
you know what? If you're going to be fair to yourself, though, at some point you have to watch Horns. You know, to see like this guy is capable of such good, and he just falls to such depths.
But the one last thing about him. That actually,
you say it's Aja, right?
How do you say his name?
I don't know. I've only ever seen it written, but just for shits and gigs, I always pronounce it Aha.
Right. Well,
you know, he's French, right? Shouldn't that J sound like an H? So he's Alexandre Aha.
Yeah.
Plus, you get to say Aha a lot.
Which by the end, haha. Oh God. Oh, one of the other things about the movie is. This would rank on a list, which should be its own separate list, of best uses of music in a movie. When Newborn kicks in, this rivals like Back to the Future, and like every time it pumps me up.
Right.
Is when the whole movie's great, but that moment where she finally is like, fuck this, no one can help me, I'm going after this. I've been desperately trying to get away from this guy. I got away from him. Now, I have to go after him. I have to chase the monster that I tried to get, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then Newborn from Muse kicks in. And it is... I could go on forever. That's a whole thing I could go on forever. That's why I'm surprised. How is it not my favorite? Because the other ones are even better.
Even better.
So, number 3, sir.
Number 3 is probably going to totally surprise you. It's a different kind of horror than anything else on this list.
Okay.
Ordinarily, this type of horror movie, which treads the line between is it psychological horror or is it supernatural horror, and doesn't give a definitive answer, usually that pisses me off.
Right.
But a movie that gives you enough evidence to conclusively decide which way it goes.
Sure.
And the best example I have of that is the movie Session 9, directed by Brad Anderson.
Good one.
Few movies, and for whatever reason, few movies scare me like Session 9. I've seen it several times. The final few moments, there is a voiceover on audio tape from an old psychology session.
Literally, I have goosebumps right now. I'm not.
Mike is popping the goosebumps right now.
Literally
Every time I see the end of that movie, it gives me goosebumps. Every single goddamn time. There is no reason Session 9 should be as scary as it is.
Right.
And it is frightening. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's scary as shit every single time. And this is a movie that, please go out and watch it and see if you agree with me. I don't want to tell you, oh, the story is about this. The story is about that. There is a crew that is sent out to an abandoned asylum to clean it up. And then shit goes off the rails. It's not a conventional horror movie, and some would say it's like a psychological thriller. To me, it's pure scary every single time. I cannot recommend Session 9 highly enough.
Right. Yeah, no, Session 9 is one that strangely I tend to forget about, but it still wouldn't have been in my top 5. By far the best movie David Caruso has ever been in.
Well,
not that I'm a connoisseur. But...
Dude, that's such an anomaly.
Yeah.
You won't believe that David Caruso is in a movie this good.
Yeah, exactly. The lead actor, I'm still waiting to be one of the best, brightest, hugest movie stars in the entire world.
Peter Mulan.
He showed up in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. He played Yaxley for all fans out there. I was so fucking excited about that. He still has yet to blow up.
Still has yet to blow up.
He's amazing. oh god, the movie. All I can say, is that it gave me goosebumps. It still always does. The ending voiceover to that movie is one of the few things that scared me to my bones.
Same here.
And it's what the voiceover is saying. It's what it's implying. I don't even think it's implying. It's hard to... without... Whatever. Terrifying. The only voice that I think reaches it is Exorcist 3 through the confessional.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. True.
Scares me to my soul.
Yeah.
That...
There was so much blood.
Oh, God. In Session 9 has that. The movie is just... It's freaky as hell. One thing that kind of does keep it from being so high for me is that I didn't like the 100% conclusion that it gave. I love how it was handled, but that would probably be what like trips it out of like my top 10 or something.
Sure.
But it is scary to the point where it's scary in the way that it is like Paranormal Activity scared me where I was scared to close my eyes. Dylan says I was scared to go to sleep, but I was scared to be awake. I think he says that about Blair Witch, but still. This is different than that. This isn't something like that. This was something that chilled me.
Conceptually, it's scary. It's not scary in that, like, boo, oh my god, I jumped. Yeah. That's so scary. Like, the more you think about it, the more chilling it is.
Yeah. And,
so,
yes, Session 9, great pick.
So my number 3.
Right. Whew. Okay, let me see. 3 for me is... Shit.
Oh shit, we're getting the build up, folks.
Fuck. Yeah, we might have to... Oh, duh. That's... Okay. Alright, so my number 3 would be... Drum roll, please, for this one. Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, excellent choice.
I have a feeling that this might be the only one that makes both lists. Maybe not. Possibly not.
Maybe not.
That makes the list. It was a hard one between... Surprisingly, it was hard between this and Dead Alive. Because I don't like zombie movies. Just because most of the time they're just not good. I just don't really care for them. I love George Romero's ones, blah, blah, blah. But this is a comedy that's almost making fun of zombies, but it's still the best example of zombies in my eyes.
I think it makes zombies scary.
Yeah, it's genuinely scary. It's like I say one of my favorite movies to go back and forth is Fargo, where I'll watch Fargo and be like, that was really funny. Then I'll go back and watch it and I'll be like, this isn't funny at all. This movie is fucking mean and terrible. How did I think this was funny? Then time will go by and I'll watch it again and I'll be like, wait, this is really fun. So that's the thing, is Return of the Living Dead, more funny, but I think it's a great example of when comedy takes you off guard, where you're like, having a fun time, and then the shit gets real.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, am I not supposed to be laughing here? Oh shit. And it's just, it is probably even more than Creepshow. The best example of EC horror come to life ever. It's Halloween the movie, it's EC come to life. The zombies all have personalities, which we've never seen since. Why don't Walking Dead kind of has been doing that, but gives them such personalities. Disobeys every rule and recreates.
This is the only movie where the zombies talk.
Yeah.
It hurts to be dead.
Yeah. Fucking amazing. The whole brains thing, that is still number 1 in zombie lexicon. And it doesn't happen in any other movie.
It doesn't happen in any other movie. And I saw it when I was very young, but for like 2 weeks afterwards, I kept saying to my buddy, come in, dispatch, send more paramedics. That shit is hilarious. Now, I in general don't like horror comedies because they tend to be comedies that have some blood in them.
Right.
This, I feel, is a very funny horror movie.
Intentionally very funny.
But It's not a comedy because it wants to be scary, but it also has great characters and very funny dialogue.
There are comedy gags in that.
Oh no, no doubt. But it doesn't sacrifice the horror at the altar of being fun.
That's what I think is so great about it. I do think that when it goes for comedy, it goes for comedy. When it goes for horror, it goes for horror, and it somehow balances those.
And it also has Linnea Quigley dancing naked, full naked on a tomb.
Yeah,
you know,
dressed like a Barbie doll.
Yeah, and this is something that you won't get in a horror movie these days.
Yeah,
which is sorely missed.
Yeah, well, Linnea Quigley altogether. But one of my favorite little side things is that's why I also just in the time that me and you have been talking about movies is Friday the 13th Part 5 keeps moving up my list of Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah,
I get more and more forgiving. One of the reasons I love it so much is it has Spider and it has crack or suicide in it, and that just blows my ass. I love it so much. And Dan O'Bannon never made a movie after. Like, he made a movie called Resurrection, which I haven't seen, but Dan O'Bannon, like, flash in the pan as far as a director.
Right, he wrote a lot of good movies.
Only thing he ever directed, and it's so filled with personality.
Yes.
Oh, but it's so restrained too. It's an amalgam of every kind. Dan O'Bannon, writer-director of this. It was originally supposed to be Tobe Hooper. He took over after Tobe Hooper left. Is the writer of Alien. Mm-hmm. Anything I'm missing, actually?
Monster Squad. Didn't he write Monster Squad?
No, that was Fred Decker and Shane Black.
Shane Black. That's right.
Yeah. But anyway, Dan O'Bannon, it's hard to be one of my favorite horror directors of all time and only have made one movie.
Well, he's 1-0, so good for him.
All right. And then Tarman is the best zombie of all time, and nothing will ever beat that.
Yeah. More brains. It's just...
Again, full episode.
It's classic.
Right.
Number two is a movie that actually, for tonight's purposes, I don't have a ton to say about it because so much has been said about it. It may be a cliche choice, but John Carpenter's Halloween.
I'm feeling you.
Yeah.
It's hard to do because, I left some stuff off because I was like,
So much has been said about it.
Yeah.
On one hand, you say, "Oh, this helped kick off the whole slasher movie craze." It did, but it's so far above what most slasher movies are. Sometimes it's hard to even consider it within that framework. Sure. It is one of the, it is everything that I love about independent filmmaking. It's everything that I love about horror filmmaking. It is timeless. There is no fat on it at all. It is streamlined and not even... Okay, at the time, it was the perfect horror movie, but it is aged very well. When you do a remake of a movie like Halloween, as good as it may be, with as talented a guy as Rob Zombie may be, there's no way to improve upon perfection. And
sure.
For me, Halloween is horror movie, low-budget filmmaking perfection.
Nice. One of on a little technical level, it was made for $350,000. $350,000, which seems like a lot nowadays. But when they had to pay for Panavision lenses and actual film,
it wasn't found footage.
Really cheap for its day.
And for many years, it held the record for being the most profitable movie ever made.
What beat it? Or most profitable? Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right, like
beat it?
Budget to what beat it?
Ninja Turtles.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
In 1990.
Okay.
Like, if you couldn't love that list more, God. And then the one after that was like Blair Witch Project.
Well, I mean, what do you expect? Like, I don't know. That just seems like it would have to be like an awesome movie.
Well, right. But Ninja Turtles, that's like my fucking...
Right, but, and like I was saying, I don't want to spend a lot of words expounding upon Halloween, which... virtually everybody that could possibly be listening to this has seen. You know what I mean?
I can deal with that and hold my criticism and all that stuff off because, yeah, it's classic. Yeah. You know, what are you going to do? Didn't make my list, but, you know.
Fair enough. Well, I think only the one did. What's your number 2?
So, that was your number...
That was my number 2.
That was 2. Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Session 9, number 3. Okay, right. Halloween, number 2.
Okay. My number 2, and again, it surprised me making this list because it has been my go-to favorite horror movie that I tell people just to see the fucking looks on their faces for years now. But when I technically thought about it after about 5 years, it slipped down to number 2. This one's going to surprise you. This is the one. Stick with me, and you'll see what I have to offer as a commentator. Jason Goes to Hell.
You have got to be shitting me.
Yep.
That's your second favorite horror movie of all time, is Jason Goes to Hell. My pick for, like, the worst entry in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yeah.
Oh, please. Please expound, brother.
Do you really think it's the worst entry in the franchise? Worse than Jason X.
Okay,
Worse than Takes Manhattan.
Okay.
Ty.
It's really bad.
Okay. All right.
To me. But, oh, God. I so want to hear what you have to say next.
Yeah. All right. So, Jason Goes to Hell. This is because, and it might have something to do, but I can go on about this, it might have something to do with every single person in the world before I saw it told me it was one of the worst movies of all time. So, expectations were on the other side for something like this.
Sure. Makes sense.
I watched it, and I was like, how is this not everybody's... This is everything that I love about horror movies. It's everything I love about movies. Jason, if we could have gone on and all these kind... Friday the 13th is my thing. That is, if I had to get a tattoo on my face, I would say, Jason, anything Friday the 13th, I'll take it. That's how much I love Friday the 13th. That and like Ninja Turtles are the deep down, but that's like
I love
childhood.
Friday the 13th, yeah.
So, anyway, so there's no reason that I should like this movie. But Jason's one of my favorite characters of all time. So another way that I think about it is I get an awesome horror movie that also has Jason in it. I'm not upset that Jason's not in Friday the 13th movie. I get an amazing, awesome movie, and then Jason shows up. Awesome. And his design, I absolutely love it. I don't consider it Friday the 13th. I think we've talked about this
before.
It's
not canon.
No, it's not canon. And so that stuff doesn't bother me. But on pure technical... And if you want to talk about on a technical level, it's not badly made. It's not badly edited. The guy was 23 when he made it, which I only found that out later. But what movie would you have made when you were 23?
Sure.
That's saying something right there. That it's the only movie that guy ever made because everybody hates it so much. I think he should come back. It was great in my eyes. It's written by the director Adam Marcus and a guy named Dean Lorey. Dean Lorey you might know nowadays because somebody finally realized what a genius he is. All hate aside, he now writes for Arrested Development. Of the best writing of the last 10 years is from the writer of Jason Goes to Hell. Stop hating. Watch it again for what it is. It's awesome.
Now all I can think about is what Tobias would say if confronted with Jason.
Right. Well, true. But it has that slickness of scene transitions. It has, not to a huge extent like this, but it's very tight. It's very slick. It's very self-aware without ever being like, we're being funny. It has the Book of the Dead hidden in it. It has all types of in-jokes to the original series. It knows that it's a bad
It has
movie,
the crate from Creepshow.
It goes for it. All the characters are ones you don't normally find in horror movies. They're the off characters. That, I believe, was a joke. They're the ones who get killed first. It's the older waitress. It's the guy, the couple with the newborn baby, who you just know that nothing's going to go. It's the nerdy guy who's never the hero in anything. The Duke is a fucking classic character. I love it. Only through of all he's can have all he's. Give me your fingers. And breaks his fingers. Now, you might be, that's all terrible. That's just silly. But I think of it almost as a comedy. But what I love is that it's almost like Adam Marcus didn't know that it was a comedy and directs the shit out of that movie. Like only a 23-year-old with millions of dollars could do. It is just so much fun. I love it. I love just endlessly violent.
Yeah.
That shotgun waitress. Just one kill. If you haven't seen it, there's a kill in there where it's a zombie movie with Jason in it too. So that's great. She picks up a shotgun, and this hot redhead is just killing the shit out of everybody with a shotgun. She then corners the bad Jason, who's in the body of somebody else. That whole body hopping thing, like I've said this before, that's the hidden. If you can forgive it in the hidden, why can't you forgive it here just because the original body had a hockey mask on it? Whatever. And so, stabs a pole through him. He grabs her, pulls her onto the same pole. She spits out massive amounts of blood. He grabs her head. I love it. She tells him to go to hell, and then he squeezes the brains out of the top of her head. I love this movie. It is one of the most fun, like I said, balls to the wall, just energetic, imaginative. The balls it took to make this movie.
Yeah.
It takes balls for me to stand by this movie. But it makes number 2.
It does. It really does.
It makes number 2 because that's the thing that everyone is always like, fuck you.
Okay.
Rewatch it again. I love that movie. Do you even want to say anything about it, or are you just like, fuck you?
You know what? I think my expression of disbelief earlier...
That was pretty telling.
Conveys it all.
Okay.
It's not something that I really feel to nitpick. I do applaud your balls in naming that.
That's a big part of it too. Is just
to number
like,
2.
It's a hated horror. It's a black sheep within a black sheep within a black sheep within. It's everything. That's it. It's everything. I love horror because it's the misfit, and there is almost no bigger outcast in the horror movie community than Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right, so now we are up to
Pick your jaw up off the floor.
I'm working on it. We're up to our number 1 picks.
Numero uno.
And you know, this is the big one. I'm not sure if the number 2 pick had some sort of contrarian, level to it. It got extra love because it's so hated.
Yeah.
But I figure number 1 is above all that. The number 1 movie, that's your number 1 goddamn movie.
Yep.
And without question, when posed the question, I always have an immediate response to number 1. There's no debating it.
Okay.
We've discussed at length found footage.
Okay.
What is great about found footage is that it allows you, more than any other movie genre, to dissolve that barrier between movie and viewer and allow you to get lost in that world like you're seeing something real. I don't think any found footage movie has done it as well as the original 1973 Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it isn't found footage.
Right. No,
it's so raw, it's so grainy, it's so down to earth that no matter what your opinion of the first few minutes is, halfway through that movie, I constantly forget that I'm watching a horror movie, and I feel like I'm watching home movies from hell. This hasn't diminished. It is literally everything that I love most about horror movies. That atmosphere, that style, that sense of dread. That connection to reality. It's not a monster from space. It's something that can happen. That sense of isolation that is necessary for horror. These characters, there's no help for them. Even if they could escape, where would they escape to? All of these things that are most bleak and desperate and uncomfortable and horrible.
Yeah.
This is a movie that for years people were convinced was the bloodiest, most disgusting movie ever made. There's virtually no blood in it.
Yeah.
It convinces you otherwise
Right.
because it is disgusting on a conceptual level.
Yeah.
It has never, ever been surpassed for me.
Huh? When in your horror movie viewing did you see it? Give or take. Within your first year of love? Your second year?
You know, it actually took a few years. It was a while after I saw the Friday the 13th movies that I saw this one. And when I was younger, on the heels of Friday the 13th movies, at first, the first half hour of it, the first 45 minutes, I'm like, there's not any titties. There should be a kill every 7 to 8 minutes.
Right.
What's going on? It's taken forever.
Yeah.
And then I get caught up into it. And she's exploring the house and seeing the bird cage with the live bird in it made out of human ribs.
Right.
And it just evaporates. I forget that I'm watching a movie and I'm like caught up in it. And to this day, I'm caught up in it every single time.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's something about that movie which, off the top of my head, might go unrivaled, where it's just like, and it's not annoying. It's not like shock value type, where it's like, who made this?
You know,
How do you think of this? This has to be like real.
Like,
how do you think of this?
Like a couple of other of my favorite movies, not necessarily ones on this list, but it was made by somebody that had never made a horror movie before.
Right.
And wasn't even that intent on making a horror movie.
Right.
You know, he wanted to do a comedy initially, and it sort of evolved.
Sure.
You know, and not on this list, but Kill List, that was made by a comedy director. And several other really good movies by people sticking their toe in
comedy
the pool.
and horror conceptually are the same structure, you know, to be as simple as possible. But the thing is, I know what you definitely know what you mean, because there was this thing that kind of like stuck in my brain for a while after watching Chainsaw Massacre, and it's when she jumps out the window at the end and she's running away with the sun has come up by this point, and there's a on the soundtrack, which I believe is the windmill.
Yes.
Going, but it's a different sound than that. It's like, and for some reason it stuck in my head that was the sound of the film moving through the camera. And so the second time I watched it, I was like, where's that sound? I thought that sound was in here the whole time. Not only if that sound would have been in there, it wouldn't have distracted me or whatever, because it feels that real that it's like you expect to hear the cameraman's footsteps.
Right.
You expect to hear all of the problems with it. Just feels like you're living into a nightmare. It is one of those.
And the best
movies that
representation
breaks
ever
that.
put on film of someone going insane.
Yeah, right.
Like Sally, it feels like you can feel her going insane.
It's close-ups of the eyes and everything. That's what I chose to be the flagship of Fright Flicks.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, that look is pure horror. And if you hear the making of it, like, they were going through some stuff. Not what she had to portray, but she was method acting. Portrays the hell out of that role. And it's just, aesthetically, I love how low budget it is. It's an example where low budget made it what it was.
Yeah, sure.
The fact that there's a ridiculously annoying character in it that would ruin any other movie works for this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you should cut him out. Or why would you cast that guy? Or why would you do this? Why would you do... It doesn't feel like there are any rules to that movie. It just exists. Yeah. And it's just... Yeah. Completely fascinating.
So that's my touchstone, my fountainhead. And
number
now...
one. Damn. Yeah, okay. Well, number one for me is, put all that stuff aside about me wanting to hawk movies, what I think is wanting to protect the black sheep, all that stuff. And get right down to what I feel is the best horror movie ever made, and that would be Scream. Scream is... I have separate lists. Me and Native talked about this. I have my favorite, which is what I'm talking to you about now. I have the best, and I have Desert Island. these are very technical lists, and they're very Scream is probably at the top of all three of those, which means it's my favorite of all time. It's one of the first horror movies I ever saw, which it fucking wrecked me. And I tried to write a short review of it, as it ended up on the top of, no spoilers, it ended up at the top of my 50 best flicks on Netflix. I tried to write a short review. I could not do it. That's on there, which is like 5 paragraphs long and fucking pretentious as shit, is me editing more than half of my original review of it. There is something... I saw it when I was young. One of the great things about it, and there's a million great things, is that movie scared me. It still has the ability to scare me, or at least I can see what's so scary about it, even if it doesn't have the visceral impact. It is what I would study for screenwriting, just in the way that how it's structured. Everything I've learned about screenwriting, I still say Die Hard and Scream. That's how you do it. And it also then ruins some of those rules. Like, you're not supposed to have an opening scene that goes on for 20 pages. Like, you're not supposed to do that. There are certain road marks you try and hit. But the thing, after all this time and analyzing it since I was 10 years old to now, and I would watch that again. I would watch that right now. If you said, let's watch Scream, I'd say, fuck yeah. Even though I watched it like a week ago. Is that movie scares me, and it scares me on a really like deep level, and it's something I pointed out in the review. I'm not scared. If you haven't seen Scream, stop listening.
You know what? No, that's bullshit. No spoiler alert on a movie that's like 10 years old or older.
If you haven't seen Scream, why the hell are you listening to this?
Right. Go see Scream. Stop listening to this.
Yeah.
Go watch all these movies we just told you about.
Other than Jason Goes Down.
I almost said it.
I'll say it. You might hate me for that one precursor. You might hate me, but anyway. I'm not scared at all of Skeet Ulrich. I'm not scared at all.
Well, who would be?
Other
than men who are in the closet.
Like,
he makes them feel funny ways. They might be scared of Skeet Ulrich.
Maybe there's... Yeah, that he looks like Johnny Depp or something. But it's like... Those two are not scary to me. And after you watch the movie for the first time, you know that's who's behind the mask. But it's Wes Craven's directing, which I think is some of the best, if not the best, directing of all time.
Yeah.
And score of all time. That Marco Beltrami, this was like the first score he really ever did. And he just nails that shit. Like, there's so, in the humming thing. Because the thing is I think Wes Craven wasn't going for typical anything. He was way, way above all of that. He wasn't going for a person with a knife is scary. Teenagers are scary. This is scary. He directs that movie that the fear of that movie is just death. And it permeates everything, and that's what it is it's just faces to death. The knife is only just a face. The Scream mask is only just a face. Billy Stu, all of this is only just faces to the best film encapsulation of what Final Destination tries to do, which is that death is coming after you. And it doesn't matter if it's somebody you've known, you don't know who it is coming after you. All this kind of... that is the primal scary thing. It's the big scary world that's now looking to get you.
What makes Scream a great movie to me is that, first of all, it's a great horror movie.
Yes.
It's well made. It's scary. Now, the meta level of it being self-referential to slasher movies gives it another level. If that's all that it had going for it, that wouldn't be enough.
Right.
But... without that, you strip away...
Yeah, exactly.
It's still good. And I almost view Wes Craven's New Nightmare as a warm-up to Scream. Mm-hmm. Because that was the movie where he got meta and he started thinking about slasher movies in a different way.
Right.
And then he was able to apply those thoughts to a much better movie.
Right.
Like, I love what New Nightmare is about. I don't think it's a great movie.
Like, New Nightmare, I try and watch it. I'm like, oh, God, New Nightmare.
But it's got a lot of interesting concepts, which
definitely
play way better in Scream.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, and, it is just, Scream is the first real true horror movie, I'd say. It's the first one that I watched that scared me. The Thing didn't scare me. None of the ones my dad showed me, his stepfather, didn't scare me. Scream scared me, and I can still watch that movie and just analyze the shit out of it, and it's still, it's like Pulp Fiction. I still, to this day, with all my knowledge, all my times of thinking about it, cannot fully put my finger on what makes Pulp Fiction explode into something past movies. And Scream has that, where I'm just like, I've read the scripts, I've read all this stuff. Is it just
at the risk of being cutesy, it's got personality. And personality goes a long way.
True. But yeah.
So, a brief recap. My personal top 5: Return of the Living Dead, The Hills Have Eyes remake.
Woo, that was a good one.
Session 9, Halloween, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And you, Mike?
And my top 5 horror movies of all time, my personal favorites, I don't even know if I can remember the word. The Evil Dead, High Tension, Return of the Living Dead, Jason Goes to Hell, because rewatch it, fuck you. I can feel you looking at me. And Scream. Favorite horror movies of all time.
What are your favorite horror movies, and why are we wrong as shit or right as hell? I'm personally right.
Bring it.
You know, you can get at me at Nate Flicks on Twitter, or get at all of us at Fright Flicks on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And you can also go on Facebook, like us, and contact us through there, or just go to frightflix.weebly.com, look up all of our face-offs reviews, and, well, that's where we're going to be posting these too. So hopefully you're watching it there, and I think that might be about it for this
That's it for
episode
tonight.
of Getting to Know You.
Next time, the next couple of weeks, we've got a lot of new reviews coming up.
Yeah.
We've also got a retrospective look at all the Rob Zombie films.
Yes,
He's got his new kickstarted 31 coming up. Should we be excited about it? Let's look at his track record and decide.
Alrighty then. Well, and that is Mike signing off.
And Nate.
Alright, see you next time.